Coffee with Connie. Today, my guest star is the fabulous Brenda with Bears Crochet Critters. How are you doing today, Brenda?
I'm doing okay and happy to be here and try to share what I do know and point you guys to other people who know more than me later on as we go through stuff.
Yes, today we're going to be talking about spinning yarn, and hopefully it'll be Brenda sharing most really the tips. I have never spun yarn. I really don't know a lot about it, but those that are interested in learning spinning, hopefully you'll get some helpful information to get you started on your journey, or possibly to progress on your journey if you've already started doing a little. So let's see, we have Anita in the house. Hi,
Hi,
Anita.
Anita.
How are you today, and what are you working on? Yeah, we'll give it a little while before we get
Yeah.
started. Give people time to pop in. We also have Gayle here. How are you, and what are you working on?
Hi, Gayle.
So, in case y'all haven't noticed, I did upload a new Crochet Tuesday video today. I'm on the ball this morning with that. uh, I also uploaded the picture video of everyone's Christmas makes from yesterday's live, too, and a couple of shorts with Alley Cat. She's becoming a little YouTube sensation.
Well, she's definitely cute enough.
Yeah. She's like, Bob, Mommy, stop filming me. You're aggravating me. Anita says she's good and working on her Abigail cardigan. Awesome. And that's the one with the broomstick lace stitch, right? Or am I confusing them?
I'm not familiar with that one, so I don't know either.
Oh, the broomstick lace stitch is gorgeous. Let me see if I can find a picture of it real quick. Um, and if I can type. Broomstick lace stitch. Let's see if I can find a picture. Okay, this should work.
Oh, and Tank's here. Hi, Tank.
Hey Tank, how are you today? And what are you currently working on? Okay, this is what the broomstick lace stitch looks like. Let me pull it up.
Oh, okay. I have a blanket like that my mom made
I love that
way back.
stitch. And the funny thing is, people actually use a broomstick sometimes to do this stitch.
Yeah, she has oh, I don't have one. But basically part of a broomstick that she still has from the 70s that she used for it.
Or the main thing they recommend using is a big knitting needle.
Yeah, I was just looking up because I have like a 25 millimeter one up over there.
Yeah, some videos say 50 millimeters. Then you can kind of be creative and make your own. It's basically just something to put the stitches on. Um, you're not knitting. It's a crochet stitch, but you got to kind of put the part of the stitches on it to hold it. And it don't look like it's hard to do. I watched the tutorial. I haven't actually done it yet, but
I haven't even watched how to do it yet, but I know of it, just haven't tried it yet for no good reason, just haven't.
it's a beautiful, beautiful stitch. So what are some of y'all favorite stitches? Or stitches you want to try? I know I love the puff V stitch. That one's pretty. And the puff braided stitch. That's another gorgeous one.
I feel bad because I don't even know what those look like. I have a few Stitch dictionaries and I look at them sometimes, but lately I haven't really. And the most recent dictionary that I was looking at was a knitting one. So sometimes I'm all knitting and sometimes I'm all crocheting and other times I'm off in spinning land and
But I'll show you what the puff V stitch looks like. It's gorgeous. And especially if you use like the right yarn. Ooh.
oh, that is pretty.
And let's see, the puff braided stitch. Let's see.
It almost looks like knitting.
It's gorgeous.
That's
Yeah, this is the braided. And let's see. I love the colors on this one. But I
yeah.
think it's beautiful.
Sorry, I'll turn in my head like a doggy.
Let's see. Gail saying popcorn is hers. Tank says one bod pure innocence shawl, one boho poncho, and organizing yarn for an upcoming CSL on Sophie's Universe. That's D's creative hands, and a few of us are going to do in the near future. Ooh, awesome!
Oh,
Yeah, the popcorn stitches is a pretty stitch. There's so many pretty stitches. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and get started talking about spinning yarn. And what type of fiber would you suggest using when you're new to spinning yarn?
So I don't always agree with everyone on that topic. I used whatever I could get my hands on. Basically, I had ordered some wool, but it was going to take a while to get here. So I started looking at roving style yarns that you can get at like Joann's or Michael's or stores like that. And I came across this Yarn Bee Showstopper stuff. It's super thick roving style yarn that I don't really consider yarn. And this is mostly acrylic. And what was cool about it, this was like, I don't have, this is more than half gone, but it was 10 ounces for $10 when wool can be kind of expensive in other fibers too. So for beginning and not feeling bad, like, oh, I'm using up my expensive wool, this was a nice alternative. This is not the only color they have, but it's pretty soft. It has a longer fiber length, which can be helpful to some beginners, but then there's other wools that are really long too that some people say it makes it more difficult. But let's see, I forgot. Oh yeah, this is acrylic and polyamide, so like a plant fiber. But I liked this because it was an inexpensive way to get started. And some of the breeds of sheep wool that are recommended are kind of in the mid range. There's a micron count of how fine the actual individual fibers are. And they say roughly like you want 23 to 30 range of coarseness. But I personally feel like you don't have to have that as a hard set in stone rule. And One of the first wools that like I did start out with, and I wanted to save it for later but didn't, is merino. And some people like it's more expensive and it's finer, but, and I've heard through research and forums and Facebook groups that people kind of discourage that, but I say if you want to try it, try it. Okay, so I kind of skipped from where I was saying, but one of the more recommended ones is Corriedale, and Romney. Where's my thing? Sorry, I'm looking at my notes. Okay, and because I have it on my other piece of paper. So, Falkland is another one that I like. Another thing I did was I started out getting a range of different wools of different coarseness to see what I liked. And I found that I liked the Rambouillet. It's a little less expensive and a tiny bit coarser than merino typically, but I was pleasantly surprised with it. Let's see, where else am I? Another thing is for a beginner, I would avoid getting a raw fleece, which has not been processed. It's still got vegetable matter like hay and grass and stickers, and because they're outside. And the growth bits, because they are cheap and out there, so I'm trying not to be too gross, but there's poo that needs to be cleaned out. But so I would avoid unprocessed fleeces and bags of wool, because there's a whole scouring process and then combing or carding to get all the dirt and like plant vegetable matter out. So what if you are looking, you want wool, not acrylic or something like that, I would look for wool top is a term, which is basically, I don't have proper combs, but it's combed instead of here you carded. This is like small scale, commercially done. It's big processing machines, but so comb top, roving, sometimes it's called sliver, and that's just different words or for differently prepared wool. When it's carded, it's usually referred to as roving, and the fibers are mostly aligned, but not as well as with comb top, which makes them even more aligned. And top, I've found, at least for me, was easier to learn with, but it's not like something I would say you can only do that. Let's see here. Another prep you might see like on Etsy and smaller shops and stuff are things called rollags, and I don't have any made right now, but basically they're made, this is just one, with hand cards and then comb it all out, and then it's rolled into kind of like a burrito like shape, and when you spin from it, instead of everything kind of being all straight, because it's like rolled up like kind of like a tube, then it's spun this way, and there's more crossing, and that type of spinning is sometimes referred to as woolen spinning, and when you're spinning from the comb top where it's more all aligned and straight, that's worsted spinning. Um, I'm kind of jumping around with terms, so I'm really hoping I'm not confusing everyone. And next thing, you're going to need a tool to spin, and you don't have to have a spinning wheel. I'll get to spinning wheels shortly, but they're at a much higher price point usually than spindles. So one thing I like about drop spindles is you can make your own. You don't have to buy them already made, but sometimes it's nice to just to go on Amazon or an Etsy or some other source and get one from like $10-15, and sometimes you can find spinning kits for, I want to say, around $30-ish, and they already have some roving or top and the drop spindle and ready to go. This is the first drop spindle I got, and I didn't buy this one. It's just basically a dowel and a wooden wheel and a cup hook, and this is how I got sucked into spinning. You remember Barbara from Crochet Delight?
Oh yeah.
Okay. I haven't seen anything from her in a while, but anyway, I won one of her giveaways, and it had this drop spindle, a couple other nice goodies, and some roving, and
they do recommend to start off on a drop spindle.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm grabbing something right quick. So this is kind of bright and hard to see, but my first attempt at spinning yarn, and I saved it because I wanted to see how I progressed, I guess. But
I did that with when I learned how to crochet. I kept all my beginner swatches when I learned each stitch.
So I wish I had those, but my beginning crochet stuff, I was like 7 or 8, so I don't know what happened to them. But so that's, and what's on here too is what my youngest child was playing around with, but has kind of lost interest, but it's okay. So that's what I started out with. You can find something like this, like I'm saying, guessing, I haven't looked in a while, but 10 to 20 range, somewhere in there. You can also, there's also lots of videos here on YouTube on how to make your own out of things. So this is just a wooden dowel and some of that bake in the oven polymer clay stuff, and I just rolled it out and used a little cookie cutter, and instead of a cup hook, I had this thumbtack that I was trying to poke a hole in a medicine bottle cap to try out, and then I was like, oh well, there's that, because I didn't have any cup hooks around, so that was my, I can make it myself, and seems to work just fine. So, and these were just me experimenting with, if you can make stuff from junk household stuff around the house. This is a chopstick, a milk bottle cap, and a metal washer, just because it was a little light and I felt like it needed to be a little bit heavier. And so, oops, I fell off. But just, if you really want to, you can do it. And then my last one, because this is another pre-made bought, but this came in, I was looking for extra bobbins for one of a different spindle that's over there, or a different spinning wheel, and basically I was looking for extra bobbins and a lazy Kate, and this was included in that bundle thing from eBay, and so this is another spindle, but it's a supported style. So there's also lots of kinds of drop spindles. There's like supported and suspended and a few others. I'm not quite remembering the names of and how to pronounce. I know them when I see them, but to avoid confusion, there's other kinds of spindles out there. And then the last one, because I was trying to get creative on what I could use to make one. This is a bolt, a washer, and 2 nuts. And
Ooh.
that works too. So
The cheapy way.
yeah, and this was like a whole $2. I go to the hardware store a lot, and so I was like, oh, I could make something out of that. So there's ways you can get ways to get started spinning without spending a lot of
without spending a lot.
And I feel like I'm missing people talking, and if I missed any questions, I'm sorry. So I just kept yammering.
There hasn't been any questions yet, okay. But if anyone has any questions about spinning, feel free to ask. I see we have Brenda and Lorele that joined us. How are y'all?
Hi, Brenda. Hi, Lorele.
Anita saying, I have some beautiful wool walking around outside. Oh, no. They're not going to become yarn.
Well, Anita, she has Yarny, her sheep, right? Am I remembering that right?
Anita has a bunch of animals. I think she has sheep. She has goats. What else do you have, Anita? I'm trying to remember. Rabbits, dogs, chickens, I think.
Whole bunch of critters.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, okay, then I guess the next kind of thing is, okay, you've spun all the yarn you want. Now what? Because at this point, it's just one ply.
I do want to bring something up real quick before we get into that part. This goes back to the yarn fibers and well, at least what they say online, which ones are the easiest to work with.
And which ones
get more complicated. All right, let me pull up the screen. Where did I put the thing? Here it is. Okay, there it is. All right. What they say online is the easiest to work with is Merino and Corriedale, I think. I might mispronounce some of these. Then when they get into the next level of difficulty, the easy level, it's the Parendell, Polworth, Gotland, and your crossbreeds.
So I don't disagree with that. The only one I've spun out of those in the last couple years is Merino. Well, with the exception of possibly Corriedale, I have some mystery wool that I don't know what it is for sure, but it's roughly comparable to Corriedale. So another, like, alpaca is another one I haven't spun yet. That one, because there's less crimp, and I didn't really explain this well before, but certain types of wool have more of a like wavy, like the 80s crimp your hair kind of look to them, and that helps some with once the fibers are starting to be twisted together, them holding together. And alpaca, oh, and also some of the scales, like under a microscope, is a lot smoother. But alpaca can be good for people who have wool allergies. Bamboo is also another option for people who, have wool animal fiber allergies. But like with bamboo too, um, if it's just spun on its own without being blended with another fiber, it can't, without having a lot more twist put into it, it tends not to hold together as well as the same amount of fiber if it was just even merino, for example. So that's why a lot of times you'll see blends, and bamboo tends to be a lot more drapey. I'm trying to look for an example. Okay. Okay. This is not the best, but so this is, I'm pretty sure, rambouillet spun up, and this is it's not as stiff. It's kind of floppy. Um, this is bamboo and acrylic blended together. So this took a little. It wasn't it wasn't very difficult to do. I was pleasantly surprised. Sometimes I think that we kind of scare ourselves out of trying something because the internet says don't try this for if you're a beginner. And I try to encourage people to not shy away. Just because someone says it's difficult doesn't mean that it will be for you, but it's
Exactly.
kind of a starting out point of reference of um these are some characteristics of it. And when I started out, I wanted to try everything. I haven't tried everything, but I, because I didn't know what I liked, and I'm still in the process of figuring that out. I have found that um, there some of the coarser wools are not my favorite because I don't feel like I'm going to wear that item, but I don't rule them out because they can still be used for something else, like art or weaving, and that's a whole nother rabbit hole. But um, there are longer there are longer lengths of fiber, like locks you might see. Do I have some? There they are. Okay, this is link border Leicester. So this is an example of some locks. And when I meant crimp, there's, see how it's kind of crimpy? Different breeds will have more finer ones, and but that's a nice, pretty long 5 or 6 inches there. And sometimes the longer fibers, I've heard people kind of say like two, because okay, how can I explain this? When you're drafting out, when you're spinning, depending on how long the fibers typically are, if you're holding too close together, you're not going to get any drafting out. You have to go out to just barely where they end, and then you can start to this is not the best example because it hasn't been really prepped, but it makes it, if when you're first learning, if you have your hands too close together and you've got like the death grip on it, you're going to get frustrated. So learning how firmly or gently to hold on to the fiber. Where am I? This is, if feel like this is easier for me to show. So if you have, so if I'm holding out here, I can pull it apart. But if I'm holding closer in, I'm not going to be able to draft out. And this is kind of basically what you're doing when you are like with spinning or twist being put in, but and then that, how much you draft out to how thin you go controls how thick your first ply or strand is going to be. So I can do this and it will keep pulling apart, but if I start adding twist to this when it was all floofy, it would have kept being pulled out, but now that it's twisted, it's holding together. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
So yeah, if I just kept pulling here, it's going to come off. But if I twist that, same stuff, it becomes stronger. And when you add more plies, it becomes even more stronger. And so I kind of lost track of where I was going with this next.
I want to greet some people that's
Okay.
recently entered. We have Trish. Let's see, Trish, Dedamore Girl. What's your name, Dedamore Girl? Also we have Angelus, Lorele, Samantha. I think that's everybody. If I missed anyone, I do apologize, but I should have told you hi in the chat.
Hi to the people who have come in. And I saw a comment of a question about where to
Yeah.
get the wool. And so with the rainbow stuff, this is yarn bead that I got from Hobby Lobby. You can get wool from Etsy shops. Lots of Facebook groups are a good source for people who have already processed lovely blended colors. Anything you want, you could probably find with sparkles and add-ins and all kinds of fun, jazzy stuff. One of the first places I found, and I know this is not the best introductory source, but it was more like a wholesale website where I bought it by the pound. And because a lot of times you'll see it sold by the ounce. So it's not uncommon to see wool and it's like 4 ounces, but you're still paying $10 to $20 for that. And so when I came across the yarn bee, which is acrylic, mostly, some of the colors do have a little bit of wool in them. So when I'm paying $10 for 10 ounces, that's a lot of fiber to practice with. But yeah, the wholesale site I was talking about is called RH Lindsay Wool, and they have lovely prices. It's the shipping that gets you. Kind of like the ice thing.
Mm-hmm.
So be prepared. Like what I did is I saved up and bought several pounds all at once. And that's when I first started learning, I was like, well, I want to try this, I want to try that, I want to try that. So that I had a wide sample to figure out, okay, I really like the rhombule I discovered that way. Sometimes, okay, there is a site that I think is run by, I want to say her name is Erin James, and I'll mention her again later for like people to go to learn how to spin. But she has a site called My Local Wool, and through there, sometimes you can find farms that are in your area that have wool you can buy from them. But I would be careful as a very, very beginner to stay away from unprocessed fleeces. That's like I want to. So this is Jacob sheep wool from a farm a few miles away from me. This was, so yeah, I was just trying to try everything because I didn't know what to pick because I didn't know what I would like. And some things I found that, yeah, I agree with what a majority of the internet says. And other times I'm like, this was not that bad. Like, and one of those was I slammed it.
The internet does say sheep wool is the best thing to use starting off.
I agree and disagree only because of I'm not the richest person in the world, and that's why I really liked the acrylic to spin with. And some people just can't handle wool. And there's also a ton of other plant fibers like rose, and there's I think some seaweed ones and hemp, and I forgot my list. But I think wool is a really good starting point place too. Like if you can find some Cordale or roving, that's really the first experience I had. And like the acrylic is a lot softer and slick. So some people might find that difficult of it's just pulling apart too much. And this, like this is this has just because of the crimpiness in it, it wants to hold it together a little bit better. So I can see how that is more friendly to a beginner of, oh, this just won't hold together. And it's a little bit more forgiving if you don't have enough twist in it to hold it together. This would probably be, in my opinion, less likely for that single strand to break on you while you're learning than something like acrylic or bamboo or silk. So yes, I agree, but only to so much. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and with all things, there's that degree that it's personal preference. You know, what I find difficult may be easy to someone else and vice versa. So
yeah, that's what I found. Like when I was first learning, it was saying, don't try silk or bamboo until you're more experienced. But I had bought some in that bulk order and I put it aside. And then one day I was like, well, I want to feel what are they talking about? Why is this so much harder? And I started spinning it and I was like, this is not the nightmare I was expecting. And that's how I came up with this.
Nice.
And the white is bamboo and the blue is 100% acrylic. And because it has less of that crimp and it was comb top, so everything was more aligned, it's much more kind of dense and not so floofy and springy, and it just wants to drape. Wow.
Okay. Poor Brenda. Brenda's allergic to almost all the fibers.
Oh, well, that's a bummer. But so like this one,
ooh, that's gorgeous.
This is this, and that's acrylic and a polyamide, so like rayon bamboo kind of thing. So something like this is a possibility. You don't have to spin animal fibers. The downside is a lot of the other plant fibers can be more expensive, but that's not a rule. Like silk is expensive. But there's also different kinds of silk I've discovered along the way too. Like there's mulberry silk, which is very expensive, and there's like tussa silk and unbleached silk, which is not as expensive. But yeah, it's kind of, unfortunately, I have lots of allergies too, but luckily sheep have not been a problem for me. I grew up with horses, but I'm allergic to horses. So to me, I'm like, is it worth me being uncomfortable and having irritation or not? But I've been lucky enough to where I haven't had a problem with it. That was one of my fears though when I first started out of, am I going to have an allergy issue? And so I feel for people who do have that.
Like if your issue is mild, you can probably get away with it. But if you have severe allergies to something, you don't want to.
Yeah, that's so. Yeah. Oh, and there was another one. Like when I was talking about like some fiber, some wools or sheeps, they have a dual coat where all their fleece is not all the same type. They have like guard hairs, which are the longer, more thick, coarse hairs, and then they have like the undercoat, which is more soft and fluffy and nice. And one of those breeds is I just had it in my hand. Oh, it's right in front of me. That's why. Okay, so Icelandic was one of the breeds that I was told was, that's for making rugs. That's coarse. You don't want that. But I wanted to try it. I wanted to feel it for myself. So this is Icelandic in roving. And so this has the undercoat, but the black hairs, I don't know if you can see, are the more coarser outer guard hairs. And I did not process it more. And this is what I came up with that. And I thought this was going to be rough. But to me, I've felt coarser acrylics. So now this is just one sheep in particular, like a local one. So I haven't spun other sources of Icelandic. So I could be wrong in other people's opinion because their experience has been with a sheep source that had coarser wool. Oh, and that's another thing too. Just because it's like there's a range, like say merino will be so many microns, but from one source to another, this merino is really, really nice and premium, fine quality, and this is another merino that's a little bit coarser. And so anyway, I didn't want people to be too scared to try stuff because you might be pleasantly surprised, or you might be like, oh my gosh, this is not for me. So
And I do want to point out some other fibers that, according to the internet, are supposed to be harder or very hard to work with. But I'm curious, Brenda's opinion.
okay.
Or she worked with them. All right, hold up. I hit the wrong button. My fingers are being clumsy. Okay. Okay. So it's saying that horde would be mohair, angora, yak down, pet hair, slippery cellulose fibers such as tercel, rose, and nettle fibers, and then banana. And they say very hard would be flax or linen.
Okay. So I'll go, if you want to leave that list up, it will help me.
Okay.
So mohair. That was another one that I was a little intimidated to try. But my husband has a coworker whose parents have some Angora goats, which is where mohair comes from, and then Angora on the list I think is referring to Angora from Angora rabbits. But they terms can be used for both. Um, so yeah, the mohair. I was also intimidated to try that one because it's like each hair or strand of fiber has finer scales. Like if you look at human hair, under a microscope or those shampoo commercials, you see the scales on the hair, and those are a lot finer and kind of stick out less than some of the sheep types. And so because it was a free source, I sent my husband home with this little envelope of mohair, and it was not processed. This was dirty off the sheep. And so I experimented with cleaning that and discovered that it was a male goat, so he was a little bit more stinky. But I did manage to get it clean, but that's a whole nother side story. But that
The
one.
side to spinning.
Okay. So here is, I don't think I have any more of it dirty, but this is mohair locks off of the sheep from locally in my area. And mohair tends to have the longer staple length or fiber length. And so it also, I really like the mohair. I don't know if you can tell, but it's kind of got that shiny look to it. It's also very fine, and it tends to shed a lot. So when I did process some of this and I blended it up with some, I think it was Rambouillet, just to see how it would dye up. I think I blended it a little too well because I didn't really see much of a difference, but I could see how the slickness of this could be like spinning the silk. You need to have a lot more twist, and it wants to not hold together as well. But it wasn't the nightmare I was anticipating. Angora rabbit is even finer, and I have not experienced that yet. But depending on how it's clipped, or don't want to say plucked, because it's not like you're ripping the hair out. It's more like when a cat or dog sheds, it just kind of gently is pulled out. Some of it can be shorter fibers, and the shorter fibers too, kind of because there's less length of the fiber to be twisted, can be more difficult for that to hold together, so you would need even more twist. Yak down, I don't know. So I don't want to give I don't know that one. I know of it, but I don't know much about it. Pet hair, like with like dogs and cats, I haven't done that either. At least with my cat. My cat has short hair, so trying to even spin that is not something I have really considered. And at least with my cat, the dander thing kind of weirds me out a little bit, but there are a lot of people who do that, and I feel like I'm being a hypocrite, because to get mohair or sheep wool clean, there's some yuckiness that needs to be cleaned out. The slippery cellulose fibers, like the terasol, I'm not sure which that one is. Rose tends to be a lot like bamboo. Let's see, I have some here. Okay, sorry for crinkly crinkles. So this, okay, it's not the best example, but it's kind of blowing out. But there's some shine to that, and it's very, very soft. Like, oh my gosh, very. I really like it, and it might just be me, but I was intimidated by spinning bamboo, and with this yarn that I made, one of the strands, I didn't blend this at all, is just bamboo, the white strand, and I was like, this is not awful, this is okay. So I forget, I was using that list as a cheat sheet. Rose, from the pictures I've seen of the fiber, have a similar look to bamboo. I can't remember what was further down the list, but I can see why they're considered more difficult. And if you're not putting enough twist into it and you're going along and this keeps breaking, I could see how frustrating that could be to someone. Oh, nettle. Okay, I have not spun that one either, but my brain first went to the more primitive way of making cordage with nettle. But when I've seen some, like, you can order it and buy it, that because it's a plant fiber, it's more smoother. Flax and linen. Okay, oh, wrong way. So this brown darker wheel behind me is sometimes referred to as a flax spinning wheel. I have not spun flax yet, but it's on my wish list for Christmas to get some flax, because that tends, no, okay, in the processing of flax, the fine stuff that gets spun typically into linen is long lengths of fiber, and that's what that big old stick back there, it helps keep all that nice and from jumbling up while you're drafting it out. And so that big old stick is called a distaff. And they're not just used for flax. You can use them for wool and other fibers too. But typically it's coarser than a lot of things being spun, and rough. Sometimes it is spun with the aid of a wet sponge or rag or a little cup of water, because that wetness kind of helps. There's a little bit of, I forget what it's called in there, but it kind of gets a little bit gummy and helps hold that once it's twisted together better. But I would agree, at least because I haven't tried it yet, I am intimidated by flax, but I still want to try it. I've seen not a lot of, there's not as much. I've watched videos over and over again, I guess is a better way of saying it, of the few things I have found about spinning flax, and it hasn't discouraged me from wanting to try. A lot of part of my brain is too is I'm the one type of spinner that I want to know how to process it from the ground up, basically, and literally with growing my own flax, processing the flax. Oh, okay. So when they process it, some of the waste in that process of getting the really nice, lovely, long fibers is, I want to say toe, but not like TOE. It's got a different spelling that I can't remember. But so it's the shorter bits, and those can still be used and spun and processed with with another project there, hand carders. I don't know, the other one is underneath me. So because the shorter bits are not too long, you can still process them with hand cards. But another tool I'm kind of jumping on that is useful for longer fibers like the Icelandic and is combs. And yeah, I'm kind of lost in all my thoughts, and I forgot where I was going again. Sorry.
It's all good. I'm like, I really don't know hardly anything about spinning. So, I looked up on the internet, learning a little bit, but way, way, way more. So what about spinning wheels?
Okay, spinning wheels. There's more than one type. This might not be the best, so I guess I'll go this way. So the darker brown one, it has the wheel on one side, like this side, and then this part right here is called the mother of all, and that has the flyer, and I can't see it myself. So these little arms with the hooks. No, it's not the best angle. Is the flyer, and then there's a bobbin. So where's my bobbin? Here. Okay. Like bobbins like that. And this thing is called a lazy Kate, but we can talk about that in a little bit too. So, and then this lighter color one, the big main wheel is down below where I'm sitting, and this part here is the flyer, and this black is a bobbin. And that, so brown one is, I'm all, the darker, the darker one is referred to as a Saxony style wheel, and then the lighter one that's more vertical up and down is considered a castle style wheel. You might see them referred to that way. So getting started with the spinning wheel. Okay, I got blessed by my husband, and he spent way too much money on me, just to be honest. So this lighter one was upwards of $1,000, and I feel a little bit ashamed about that. I don't tend to spend a lot of money on myself like that. So I don't want that to be, oh my God, that this is way too expensive of a hobby. The second wheel I did get, which is over there in the other part of the room, is a used wheel that is the Saxony style, and I got it for $50. Sometimes, and I found that through Facebook Marketplace, you're not always going to be that lucky. I see them usually go for $150 to $300. And you have to be careful with some sellers because they think they have an antique wheel. Because I've even seen one that said, like, antique wheel, they don't make spinning wheels anymore. So But I got lucky. That one needed a little bit of fixing up, and I was fortunate because a short time before then, there's a lady here on YouTube called Jillian Eve, and she has a ton of information on spinning and more technical details of the how and the why and how to use tools, how to get started. Spring the Fiber Enthusiast also has cool stuff too. But the Jillian Eve lady, Evie, she had a video showing her fixing up a wheel that was the same make and model as the one I happened to find. And with that, I was more confident with fixing up a fixer-upper wheel. Another less expensive way of getting started is sometimes, not all of them, these can be very expensive too, is an e-spinner or an electric spinner. And those just use electricity, and you don't have to have a foot pedal or treadle. There are also plans out there for making your own spinning wheel if you're crafty in that way. So there are, if you look hard enough and you're patient, sometimes you can find a usable wheel. And I've heard this a lot too, and part of me as a beginner, I was like, well, I'm not going to shy away from that old antique wheel. I can fix it up because I think I'm so great or something. But if I had, so this darker brown wheel behind me is an antique. It has some things that need to be fixed up on it that I haven't gotten around to, but it still technically works and spins. I just didn't want to cause any more damage before I made sure it was all good. But 2 years ago, I learning to spin on a wheel that does need some work. And when you're not familiar with how it feels when a spinning wheel spins correctly and is operating well in the way it should be, I could feel like is another way to get really frustrated and discouraged and to think that this is too hard, I can't do this, and give up on it. So while you, oh, and another thing is a lot of older antique wheels, they can be missing parts. And with some wheels, finding those replacement parts can be hard. The one that I was successful in fixing up, it was an Ashford traditional, and they're very common to find around. And because they still make that wheel, it's a, I want to say New Zealand company, but because they're still in manufacturing them today, you can still order parts from them. So that was one of the selling points to me when I saw this spinning wheel that needed a little work. I was like, well, I can get the parts for it still. So I want to say that same, not the one that's behind me, but the one I did fixed up, a new one of that same make and model, unfinished, like the wood's not finished, I want to say is around $700. So if you can find a good working one from the 70s, 80s, and I see them on Marketplace, at least in my area, all the time. Well, not all the time. Common enough to where there's one sitting on there in my area for the last couple of months that I feel is a little too high. They want $400, but that's half the price of a new one. So I would say take your time, and if you really want a wheel that you might be able to find something that you can save up for that is usable and workable. And if there are, sometimes you can find dealers. In my area, I'm kind of rural and it takes me a long time to get anywhere. So when I got this lighter one, this was my first wheel. and it was during the pandemic stuff all first starting. Um, there was nowhere to try one out. And if you can go somewhere where they have multiple wheels to try, I would encourage that, because all three of my spinning wheels are different. They all work in the same general way, but the lighter one here is a whole different experience from the Ashford traditional one that I fixed up that you can't really see. And then this darker antique one behind me is spins very, very fast compared to the other ones. So, and then there's, another thing you might see when looking for wheels is double drive or single drive. So again, this darker one behind me, it's called double drive because the drive band, the white string, I don't know if you can see it, that goes around the wheel to the flyer and bobbin is wrapped around twice. And so one of those strands is driving the flyer and the other one is driving the bobbin, where this lighter colored one, it's just got one drive band that is driving the flyer part, this part, and then there's, this one's a little different than normal ones. This is like a newfangled thing, but this little knob it has a brake. It's slowing the bobbin just enough to where when they're both spinning around, that the flyer is going faster than the bobbin and causing it to wrap around. So this would be a single drive Scotch tension. There's also single drive wheels that are called Irish tension, where the main drive, it's a little bit of an opposite thing, where the drive band is driving the bobbin and the brake is on the flyer. So, and that's the Irish tension, but I started out with the single drive and Scotch tension. The other Ashford traditional I mentioned, that's over there, is another traditional. Sorry, I just lost track of it. It's another single drive Scotch tension type of wheel. So hopefully I didn't confuse you too much with that. There is a lot out there, and I feel like I'm missing everything that everyone's saying, so I'm trying not to be rude and just talk over everybody. It was just I had so much in my head. I was like, this, oh, that.
I don't think anyone else has asked any questions unless I missed something. But I've been trying to keep an eye out for questions. But one thing I do want to mention, these are some sources that Brenda had told me that are good for if you want to learn more about spinning yarn. Of course, there's Spring with Spring the Fiber Enthusiast. She's an amazing spinner. Sadie Spincraft, Jillian Eve, Fairly Fiber Fun, Fiber Love Diary, BF Fiber Arts Creations by, I think,
Tasman, I think is her name.
Tasman, Juby, something like that. And Crafty Housewife Yarns. So those are other sources that y'all could learn a lot from too.
So the Crafty Housewife's yarn, I want to kind of put out a warning. It's not a negative thing, but she is also a dealer of this brand of wheel. It's a Spinolution. But on her YouTube channel, she does have videos on how to get started learning how to spin. She does have reviews of this brand of wheel. I don't know if she was the one that is connected to the My Local Wool, where you can find farmers and buy directly from them. And I believe she used to have an online course on how to spin, but I haven't checked into that in a long time. So I don't know if that's still a thing she's doing. The other person I highly recommend is Jillian Eve. I have learned so much from her in the last couple years, and she is more of a technical spinner where she explains how to have a consistent yarn of I spun it like a month ago at this thickness, this much twist to it, and I want to make that same yarn again. And she has lots of videos explaining on how to do that and how to use tools like and why hand cards you might want to use hand cards. This is not the best example. There's wool combs that look kind of like this, but much more scary, like Wolverine claws. That are another expensive tool that I haven't gotten yet, but this is my makeshift version. But these are hair picks, but the tines are very sharp and you can hurt yourself with them. But Jillian has tons of information on spinning if you want to get super nerdy of the how and the why, and it's like so much information. Sorry, I really like her, and she's very sweet and positive lady, and I like her. And then like there's other Fiber Live Diary. She has lots of stuff and does dyeing and does Paradise Fibers, which is another source I just remembered where you can get wool from and other fibers too. And she does like an unboxing kind of like this Fiber of the Month Club, I think it was something like that. So and there's also lots of other spinners out there too on the internet. These are just some of the people that I've found that I keep going back to and I liked. So I thought I would share.
Awesome. So we're going to go ahead and start wrapping up. I hope that today's live was helpful to those of y'all that want to learn more about spinning and try doing it. And if y'all do try it, let us know how your journey goes. I know I'm curious. Like I said, I've never spun yarn before, so I learned a lot of new things today. One thing I do want to point out, I will not be going live Thursday. Hence, I did Coffee with Connie today. Since it's Thanksgiving, I'm not going to do a live Thursday. But I will be going live Saturday at 12:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. And Melissa with Crochet and Agreement is going to be my guest star. And she's going to talk about dyeing yarn and also show some of her beautiful hand-dyed yarns. So I hope y'all can make it to that live. I'm going to play a short closing video. Then I'm going to come back and say our goodbyes and stuff. So let me get that video for y'all. Where is it? Where is it? Oh, here it is. No, that's not the right one. Oh, here it is. Sorry, y'all. So, anywho, Crystal with Crystal the Yarny. Hold up, Crystal with
Crazy
saying her name.
Crystal the Yarny Chicken and Crazy Cat Lady.
It's live right now. I don't know why I was struggling today. But anyway, go alien invade her. And I hope y'all all have a fabulous Yarny day. Have a happy Thanksgiving and bye.